Hello. I wanted to quickly walk you through a tutorial to add a little extended practice for how to finish your summative writing section for your ancient civilization project that you've been working on since last week. So, the main question that you've been answering is what aspects make a civilization advanced? You and a partner or partners spent time researching very briefly about an ancient civilization from the Middle East to sections of China and determining what aspects in particular made your civilization advanced. And you looked at specific categories, you took down facts, and you actually presented some of those facts to the class in a propaganda presentation. Now, to continue the skill that we've been working to master in the last couple of weeks, I also wanted to add to your Comp 3 a writing element. Now, you're not going to write a formal paragraph or paragraphs. You're actually going to complete an outline. And while this is a summative, this is also a continuation of the writing and social studies that will be integral as we move into our next summative, which is going to be an essay on the Greeks and Persians. So this tutorial is to help you just remind you the steps of what you need to complete. And as a reminder, I've used a civilization that is not being used by another person in class. So the Chaldeans are not, this should not be used in any of your outlines. This is simply just to show a model. But the takeaway is you can use some of the strategies that I talk about to help set up the correct format for your outline because this will be part of your Comp 3 grade. So, the first thing that happens on your outline is you'll notice that there's a question. And the question that I'm asking is what aspects make a civilization advanced? We defined what the word advanced means, which means further along in skill or knowledge. And the idea was you're trying to determine as your civilization developed things and found new knowledge and created new things for their civilization, what were things that made them more advanced than a civilization that didn't have those aspects? Be careful. I'm not asking how do they impact today. Instead, we're trying to determine by an understanding of the word advanced, because this is going to be a really important word for the next several weeks into other summatives that we complete. So what I did first was remember the trick. The first thing you do when you write is you develop a thesis statement. Thesis statement is also your argument, and it should be formed from the question. Many of you are struggling with this. So what I would encourage you to do is look at my model and use it to formulate your thesis so that it's correct. Many of you actually just immediately answered the question when you did your first writing, many of your writing practices, when I asked what aspects make a civilization advanced, you literally went right into the answer. And that's not the intention of this writing that we're doing. Argumentative writing develops a thesis, provides evidence, and then gives an answer to the question saying this is how the evidence proves the question correct. So for your thesis statement, I am requiring that you have 3 areas of your notes that you did not cover in the presentation. You can have similarities to your partner, but if you cannot copy your partner's outline, this is a separate task. So please do not work together on this. This should be done separately. What I did though as my model is I took the question. You'll notice I have I've added words and I'm actually adding one now. I took categories. So the category for my model is scientific, but I would put many scientific, religious, governmental, whatever your 3 categories that you're going to focus on, or 2 categories if you have 2 facts from one category. I would make them the first part of your sentence. Now, the reason why I have blank lines here is I don't know what your categories are going to be. For my model, I'm using a scientific category, so I put the word scientific. So I would say many scientific, religious, and governmental, societal aspects made the ancient Chaldeans an advanced civilization. Now you're going to notice I've added the word in for my civilization. So if you have the ancient Chinese, the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Sumerians, just add that word in. But everything else, I have the words for my question: aspects, made, and then you'll notice at the end an advanced civilization. So I've taken the question and I've turned it into a statement. I've had to add in a little bit more substance to this question because I can't just put many aspects make a civilization advanced. I need to be a little more specific to the civilization that I'm talking about. Please feel free to use this model to develop yours. Just make sure you change out the word Chaldeans to whatever your civilization is. And your category might not be scientific, it might be something else. So just make sure you change that word out as well. Okay, so I have my focus, I have my argument. Now, the trick that I've told you is you actually will not go to A, you'll go to your specs. Before I can build the writing of how I'm going to defend my argument, I need to choose a piece of evidence that is an unbiased, detailed fact about something that the Chaldeans did in science that made them an advanced civilization. So on page 90 in the textbook, I found a fact that said, for instance, the Chaldeans recorded their observation of the stars and made maps that showed the position of the planets and the phases of the moon. This is a fact of what they did in astronomy. I like this fact because what it says is the Chaldeans used science to start understanding the world around them. And for me, that proves that they're advanced. And I'll show in my analysis, I'll explain how. A couple tricks of the specs just to remember. One, it needs to have detail and it can't be an opinion. The textbook actually said, the sentence before this one said, the Chaldeans were also noted for their interest in astrology and their knowledge of that. And the problem with that sentence is it's an introduction sentence. It doesn't give me any substance. Some of you have been putting that as your specs. Be careful. You need to give the specific thing what they did. Like I should read this fact and know exactly what the Chaldeans did. And I'm able to do that with my sentence. You're also going to notice that I took a direct quote from the book, which I expect you to do as well. So if your notes are shorthanded, please go back to the book to get the direct quote. You should have the page numbers as your citation. You'll also notice that I have embedded the quote. I said, for instance, the Chaldeans, and then I embed the quote and I put the quote from the textbook. Now, you should not have punctuation at the end of the sentence. You actually will put your citation, which is text and the page number and a punctuation. Now, as another noted formative noticing that I had, some of you put the page number, the paragraph number, the line number. You don't need to do that. In this case, it is just text and the page number. Remember what I told you for the social studies classes, our textbook will just have you put text. If it was another book, you would put the author's last name and the page number. This is MLA format, and this is the format we use in social studies. Okay, so I've chosen my specs. I have this fact. Now I need to start building around it to make it have more substance. So the first statement that I'm going to create, which for some of you is the hardest, is the supporting detail statement. The supporting detail statement, remember, is a bridge that narrows my focus of my thesis and narrows into what my specs will be about. So one of the tricks that I've told you is to actually take some of the words from the thesis statement and some of the words and categorize what you think the specs will be about. So this A section is going to be about science. So you'll notice that I have 3 possible areas that I would focus on. So I actually took the word scientific to let my reader know this is going to cover the scientific part of my thesis. So I have a simple statement. The Chaldeans, that's who I'm talking about, had many scientific advancements. That comes from my thesis. And then in the area of astronomy is categorizing what this specs will be about. And that's really what it's a bridge. It takes it like a funnel and it narrows me to the specs. Otherwise, your thesis is way too big and your reader's not going to have a sense of what this set is going to be about. All right, so use that. Hopefully that will give you a support in helping you set up yours. Now, the analysis statement is a little more complex. The analysis statement's job is to explain how this specs, not the whole thing, just this specs, proves that my thesis is correct. Because what I'm doing is this piece of evidence, I need to explain to the reader why I think this is an advancement. And some of you are doing it so that you're talking about like the Babylonians as a whole. Don't do that. Make sure you just talk about the specs. So I say, observing the stars and mapping the planets and phases of the moon. By putting this statement, I'm recognizing my specs. As we move forward, I might break this a little bit, but as we're starting out, I want you to actually recognize the specs you're talking about because I think this will help you. Then I use words for my thesis. I say, made the Chaldeans an advanced civilization. I'm recognizing the end of my argument because, and remember what I said, 99% of the time you will have the word because their studies, and this is my thought, provided insight into the understanding of the passage of time. Through the civilization would have greater insights when to plant crops, predict weather patterns, make maps for travel, and provide deeper understandings into the night sky. And you'll notice that I'm wordsmithing as I go. So this is why, I'm explaining through right here, understanding the passage of time. That's one of my rationales. A civilization that understands the sky and understand how it moves can understand times of day, phases of the moon, understanding times of month. Then I go on to talk about when to plant crops. Well, if they notice like the sky moves in this regards, it's better to plant crops then than now. Predict weather patterns, possibly. That's an assumption. I don't know if I'm correct there. Make maps for travel. Stars definitely worked in traveling. And so I could think about that and then provide deeper understandings into the night sky. Ancient civilizations were in a state of constant, why is this happening? What is this? And so by the Chaldeans doing this, it actually provided them with a deeper understanding. So I've given you my rationale. You'll notice that it's 2 sentences because otherwise it's a huge run-on sentence and we don't want that. And that's perfectly acceptable. In the first sentence, I defend with the passage of time, and then I go on to provide some more examples with this last section of my analysis. The most important thing you need to remember is I am focusing on just this specs. I don't talk about all the other scientific achievements the Chaldeans did. This is the one that I consider to be the most advanced. This is the one I'm focused on. All right. So for your other two, you would look at 2 other categories or 2 other facts, and you would follow the same pattern. Your B statement, though, will not be a lead in. It will connect with the thesis, but it will lead into your second specs. So the idea is with your B and your C statements, they're bridges that are narrowing your reader's focus to the specs you're going to talk about. Because as we move forward, our thesis statements are going to become bigger and bigger, and our writing is going to become bigger and bigger. So this supporting detail statement is such a crucial bridge to helping your reader make sense of what it is you're talking about. I hope this tutorial helps and it provides some insight into how to complete the last part of your summative. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me. Good luck.